Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first installment of a multi-part series about Kundalini. I've put a lot of time and effort into this, and I really do indeed hope that you'll watch it in its duration. Yes, it's a little long, but the information I believe is crucial. Kundalini is the way out of this mess here in this New World Order controlled world, ladies and gentlemen. We really need to get it back into our lives so that we can get vital again, and so that we can realize that there's much more to life than the bill of goods that we've been sold. So in this video, I'm going to talk about exactly what Kundalini is, and I'm going to explain exactly what it isn't, because there's a lot of confusion nowadays about this subject. A lot of people who have never experienced it are talking about it and preaching about it, and I think that's a little ridiculous. So I'm going to go into deep detail about my experiences with it, what it is, how it transforms human consciousness and the human body, and why it's so crucial to our well-being as humans, ladies and gentlemen. Kundalini is part of our biological blueprint. It is a energetic highway that we currently have closed off in our human bodies and in our mind and in our consciousness. So again, in this video, I'm going to talk about the history of Kundalini. I'm going to show you guys symbols of ancient cultures and how ancient cultures venerated the serpent and the Kundalini energy, and how both of them are intertwined so intimately. I'm going to show you video examples, picture examples, you name it. So I think that you can really get a lot out of this video if you watch it in its duration. So I do indeed hope that you do. And please always remember to leave comments and hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. So let's dive right into it, and may peace be with you all. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be a very special video, I believe. We're going to dive deep into the serpent, what it represents, what it symbolizes, the archetype of the serpent. We're going to talk very deeply about the Kundalini energy. This is going to be the first installment of a series regarding the serpent worship, how far back it goes in human history. We're going to talk about how the serpent has been demonized by mainstream religion, why it's been demonized by mainstream religion, what the purpose of that form of mind control has been. We're going to go deep into a handful of subjects in this series. I can't guarantee you that we're going to get into all of these topics in this video, but I'm going to do my best in this first installment to go really deep into this subject. So although you're not looking at much right now other than this beautiful tree and the light coming throughout the video, there's going to be video overlays, audio overlays, picture overlays. We're going to look, ladies and gentlemen, at all the edifices of ancient cultures and civilizations, the temples, etc., that show direct symbolism of the veneration of the serpent. And what I mean by that is, if you look closely, ladies and gentlemen, at most ancient civilizations, you will indeed find within their temples, within their religions, within their breastplates, their helmets, you will find symbolism of the snake, the serpent, which is not only a symbol of divine wisdom, it's a symbol of divine wisdom because it represents the Kundalini energy, the primal force, the divine nectar of the inner God, inner gnosis, ladies and gentlemen. The Gnostics, Gnostic, not agnostics, I'm talking about the Gnostics, were privy 100%, 1000% to what the serpent represented. They knew that it represented a process within the human biology, within the human physiology, the anatomy that could be woken up and could be raised up the spine. And when it reached the head, they knew that they would become God. So that's something that most people cannot put their finger, or they can't wrap their head around it. But I'm going to do my best to explain all of this stuff, ladies and gentlemen. If you look at the Caduceus, which you're seeing on the screen right now, this is a perfect, absolute symbol of Kundalini. If you look at the staff in the middle, ladies and gentlemen, that represents the human spine. And if you look at the two serpents wrapping around the staff, that represents two particular pathways known as the Ida and the Pingala. These pathways are two of the main three channels that the Kundalini energy rises up on its ascent from the pelvic floor, the coccyx, the sacral bone, from that particular region, which is the throne of God, all the way up the spine to the head. If you look at most depictions of Caduceus, you'll see a bulb at the top. This represents the brain. And when the two serpents come together in the middle, or at the top, this represents the dormant regions of the brain igniting and waking up. And when that happens, on most depictions of Caduceus, ladies and gentlemen, you see a set of wings that look like angel wings at the top. This represents the completed pathway of Kundalini rising. It represents the successful rising of the Kundalini up the spine, up all of the chakras, into the brain. And when you experience Kundalini, ladies and gentlemen, if the energy can get from the base of the spine to the top of the head, what ends up happening is that the Kundalini energy goes into the king and the queen's chamber, the pineal gland and the pituitary, as well as every single region of the brainstem, the medulla oblongata, the pons, the cerebellum, the neocortex. When the Kundalini energy gets into the brain, it turns on this magnificent organ, like a light bulb turning on. And suddenly, at the speed of light, and in the flash of an eye, your consciousness is opened up 10,000-fold. And you can now bear witness to the truth of the angelic kingdoms, of God, of the various dimensions, because now, ladies and gentlemen, you can actually see into what I call the darkness of the ether, which is a metaphor for you being able to see into those areas and avenues that you prior could not see into because of your conditioning, because of the fact that you had no Kundalini energy in your system. When the Kundalini gets into the brain, ladies and gentlemen, when it passes the thymus, the thyroid, when it gets into the king and the queen's chamber, your assemblage point, which is a part of your energetic field, moves to a new location, and it opens your consciousness up in ways that would make the average person weep. It is remarkably beautiful. And now you can see into the full picture of the electromagnetic spectrum. You see, we are kept in the dark, so to speak, here in the Matrix, because the New World Order has not only systematically and selectively bred the Kundalini out of us, it's kept us in a very limited scope of the full electromagnetic spectrum. So mind control takes us away from our godhood, which is our birthright. And it does this by removing our connection to the Kundalini energy. And when we remove ourselves from this energy, ladies and gentlemen, we get taken out of the full picture of the electromagnetic spectrum. Please look at the screen right now if you're listening, so that you can have a better representation. You get taken out of the full picture of the electromagnetic spectrum, which, you know, you can look into, you can see into the truth when you're enlightened, ladies and gentlemen. When you're experiencing Kundalini, there are no limits on how far you can see into this spectrum. That's why people who experience Kundalini can see things that people who aren't experiencing it, they can't see it. It's because you're seeing past your blinders. But mind control takes place, and it takes the electromagnetic spectrum and your perception's ability to see into it, and just like you're seeing on the screen right now, it puts it into a very limited little slot. So the New World Order, has systematically and selectively bred this energy out of our systems, ladies and gentlemen. This is no joke. This is a very serious subject. This is our birthright being taken from us. And they've erected dogmatic religious ideologies and programmed them into us consecutively for so long that we've been now conditioned to believe that the serpent, which is the savior, the serpent force, the Kundalini, gnosis, whatever you want to call it, we've been conditioned to believe that this energy, ladies and gentlemen, is evil. So it's just remarkable what we've been led to believe, what we've been led to fear, what we've been led to hate. I mean, most people who are oriented with the Christian religion of the modern era are completely brainwashed. So let me just adjust my camera really quick so I can get a more comfortable position, folks. Now, I've tried to be very careful about how I've worded things in this video in regards to modern religion, especially Christianity, because I know a lot of the people who are considered, that consider themselves Christian, I know a lot of them are good-hearted people, but a lot of them are misguided. They are symbol illiterate. Again, acquaint yourself with this word, symbol illiterate. A lot of them cannot see obvious truths when they're right in front of their faces, and unfortunately, because they take the Bible seriously, they can't grasp the bigger picture. They don't see symbols in the Bible. The Bible is a symbolic treasure chest, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, it's been handed down so many times through corrupt kings, priesthoods, you name it, and it's been rewritten and rescribed so many times that how can you know what the fucking truth is, ladies and gentlemen? How did you know that your Bible is the truth? How do you know? Are you just going off of faith? Because, you know, the people who use the Bible that you don't agree with, their faith tells them that their Bible is correct and that yours isn't. So faith obviously is not an accurate path to truth, as Matt Dillahunty has, famously said hundreds of times, thousands of times. It is not, faith is not an accurate path to truth. I know that goes against the grain of what you've been programmed with. And that is some of the most serious programming in the human collective consciousness, the idea of faith. Just have faith in God. Just do what you're told. And, you know, you'll get into the pearly gates. Get real. The pearly gates is a symbol for your consciousness reaching heaven. Heaven is a state of mind, ladies and gentlemen. It's called when the twin serpents raise and ignite your Kundalini through the awakening and the arousal of all of your chakras, also known as energy pylons. When the energy moves through your cerebral spinal system, you are brought into heaven consciousness, ladies and gentlemen, which is what we were designed to experience. You see, we were designed to walk around this beautiful Garden of Eden that we're living in right now, this beautiful Shambhala, whatever you want to call it. This beautiful dimension, this living library garden, we were designed to be enlightened and with our Kundalini moving through us constantly. Life was designed to be a paradise, whether you believe that or not. Now, I don't have the ability to just hit every nail on the head in this video, but I'm going to do my best. So you may be thinking, but don't you have faith in the Kundalini? You know, how do you trust this energy, blah, blah, blah? Well, I've experienced it on a handful of occasions. I went out of my way at a very young age to separate myself from the herd to pursue finding enlightenment. I had a hunch that enlightenment was possible that fueled a very deep passion of mine at a very young age and motivated me to do everything I could to discover, okay, there's got to be more to this human experience. How can I find out? And through my struggles, I found out that Kundalini is a very real thing. My path was not built on faith. I had a strong hunch that it was real, and I wasn't going to stop until I discovered whether or not it was. And what I mean by that is I wasn't going to stop until I found out if enlightenment was part of the human genome, if we had access to something greater. And I eventually did find and discover that yes, the human body has the capability to experience drastically heightened states of consciousness, awareness, bodily activation, you name it. There are so many energetic pylons within the human body, not just the 7 main chakras. We have hundreds of thousands of energy vortices, vortexes, etc., all along and within our body that are currently in a state of what I like to call dimhood. And what that is, ladies and gentlemen, is it's basically a light bulb that's operating at 1,000th of its illumination capacity. So think about it this way. If you're in a dark room, or if you're in a cave, which represents your ignorance in this case, and you have a torch that only puts off a tiny little flame like something from a Bic lighter, your path is not going to be that illuminated now, is it? Your ignorance, you're not going to be able to see around you and discover that, okay, I've been deluding myself, yada, yada, yada. Well, you take that same torch and you put a giant flame on the end, your path is going to be a little bit more illuminated, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? I like to speak symbolically in metaphors because it paints a picture through a symbol. And we know that the language of the subconscious is symbolism. I hope that while I'm explaining these things, if you're listening to this video, that you apply your creativity, your mental creativity, and try to envision the things that I'm talking about. Envision that, excuse me, folks, envision that torch with a tiny little flame in it, or on the top of it. Are you going to be able to see around you? Not really. Now imagine that torch ablaze. You're going to be able to see around you much better, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to be able to see the textures of the cave around you. You name it. We need to shake off all of our programming. We need to reawaken the Kundalini within us, ladies and gentlemen. We have the ability to do this, but we've got to separate ourselves from the mind control. The Kundalini has been represented so many times throughout history. Ancient civilizations did this phenomenally well. It's absolutely beautiful to look at the depictions of Kundalini symbolism throughout ancient civilizations, especially after you've experienced it, because it speaks to you subconsciously in monumental ways, ladies and gentlemen. You see, when you know what Kundalini is, when you've experienced it, you can accurately look at ancient civilizations and their symbolism with your blinders off and see to the core of the picture. Let's take a look right now at the headdress of the sarcophagi, the pharaohs. Let's see at the top how there's a cobra coming out of the forehead. Do you think they just randomly picked one of the, like, well, let's just pick let's just put a depiction of a cobra on the forehead region of the brain, which is directly connected to the innermost regions of the brain, the pineal gland, the pituitary gland, you name it. This particular part of the forehead that they have the snake coming out of is symbolically rich to the core. What this represented was that they had mastered the successful rising and kindling of the Kundalini energy, ladies and gentlemen. As I said earlier, when the Kundalini energy gets into the head, it puts you into a state of what's known as heaven consciousness, or also Heru beheaded. I've talked about Heru beheaded extensively in past videos, but Heru beheaded is basically when you get the Kundalini energy to pass all the demons and the locks and the tests of the lower chakra systems, and when it gets into the head, it separates itself, the Kundalini separates itself from the lower dictations of the chakra, the demonic aspects of the lower chakra systems, and now you're Christ beheaded. You don't actually have your head cut off. It means that your head is now operating over the lower animal instincts of the lower chakra systems, folks. The head is now the control center. Heru beheaded. But when Heru beheaded, or Christ consciousness, or Kundalini, Nirvana, Samadhi, whatever you want to call it, initiated within the ancient Egyptians, for instance, they were driven into drastically heightened states of consciousness that became the fundamental religious foundation for their entire fucking culture. And you see this again. You see them exalting Kundalini throughout their religious edifices, their statues, all of the obelisks, ladies and gentlemen, the pyramids, all of the serpent symbolism on the walls of Egypt that have been scribed into the limestone, etc., through, you know, with their hieroglyphics. Absolutely incredible, absolutely monumental. The sarcophaguses were symbolized in gold, or clad or cast in gold, ladies and gentlemen. Gold is a very potent symbol. It's an alchemical symbol for reaching the sun, which is what Kundalini does, ladies and gentlemen. It allows us to wake up Archangel Michael, which was depicted by I believe the Persians as Mithra in his bull, which was a depiction of a earlier deity known as Kartikeya. I believe I'm pronouncing that properly. Kartikeya was symbolized with a peacock. The peacock represented his ability to pierce through the dimensional regions and be able to see into the ether. That's why the peacock has so many feathers. It's a symbolically pure symbol because the feathers, all of the multiple feathers, are like facets that reach into the various dimensions. What this essentially in layman's terms represents is Kartikeya's ability, ladies and gentlemen, to actually be able to see into and interact with the full scope of the electromagnetic spectrum, which us here in the United States and worldwide currently, we exist in a tiny little fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum. We can't see jack diddly squat. It's disgusting. And we operate our lives in this limited state, thinking we know everything or that we're so smart and listen to the experts. The scientists know everything. We are a disgusting, cancerous tumor on the ass of a once great culture, civilization, whatever you want to call it. Our genome has cancer, ladies and gentlemen. So I hope that you're watching the sun right now and letting that sun enter into your eyes. Where was I going with that? Excuse me, folks. So, there's so much that could be said about this subject. You see in the Aztecs, the Mayans, the Toltecs, they all had deep serpent symbolism. Let's look at Quetzalcoatl for a second. Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, the flying serpent, the Kundalini that ascends, the rising phoenix, you name it. I mean, come on, it's everywhere. Apollo, the Greeks, I mean, Jesus Christ. But as I was saying, the gold of the sarcophagus, the gold that was so commonplace in Egypt, it represents evolution. It represents the spiritual gnosis. It represents the sun, ladies and gentlemen, and Kundalini brings us to the sun in multiple different ways. We'll talk about that later in this video, hopefully. If not, we'll get into it in part 2. But the gold, incredible. Gold, in many ways, shapes, and forms, especially within medieval alchemy, represented the transmutation process of base metals, lead, into pure gold. Now, to the typical and mundanely oriented alchemists of yesteryear and today, many of them believed that the crux of alchemy was transmutation of actual physical objects. So they spent a lot of time by fires, mixing potions, trying to actually transmute base metals, transmute lead into actual gold. Now, whether or not they were able to do that or not, I'm not sure. I don't believe that there's an actual documented case of an alchemist actually being able to transmute base metals into physical gold. These types of alchemists are known to many, especially in the modern era, as the puffers. They would sit around fires, billowing them and puffing them and, you know, working all these physical objects. But the true alchemy, ladies and gentlemen, although you do require some physical alchemy to practice real alchemy, and we'll talk about that in just a second, but the true alchemists were individuals who realized that the true Holy Grail was the human body. The true alchemists sought to raise the sleeping serpent that sat at the pelvic floor in slumber. They sought ways to raise this energy because they knew that through awakening Kundalini, ladies and gentlemen, successfully, you would turn your own metaphoric lead into gold. You would be reborn, which is another symbolism of gold, ladies and gentlemen, rebirth. Whether you like to believe that or not, whether people, modern alchemists, you name it, want to believe it or not, the true foundational crux, the core, the nucleus, the genetic material of alchemy is raising Kundalini energy, because through Kundalini rising, you become enlightened, ladies and gentlemen. And enlightenment, also known as gnosis, samadhi, Christ consciousness, Heru, beheaded, whatever you want to call it, that is the foundation, the goal of alchemy. It's not to turn lead into gold so that you can sell a bunch of stuff and make a ton of money. No. The ancient alchemists sought to raise the Kundalini energy. And they did this in a multitude of different ways. They would store energy from the world around us, or around them, through breathing exercises. They noticed at a very early point in their history that human beings were being fed on by what John Kreider likes to call predatory non-organic beings. And instead of them trying to constantly keep these predatory non-organic beings away from them, they started to do what they were doing to humanity, and they started to feed on energy just like the predatory non-organic beings were to humanity. So in many ways, shapes, and forms, ancient alchemy started as an ancient form of energetic and elemental vampirism. And vampirism, regardless of all of your Hollywood programming, has nothing to do with floating around in people's windows and romancing people and, you know, wearing white makeup and all this stupid bullshit. Real vampirism is about energetic storage. It is about lifespan prolongation by way of energetic storage and the acquisition or reacquisition of true power. The true vampires are alchemists, ladies and gentlemen. And throughout history, ladies and gentlemen, the alchemists were privy to the fact that we have the ability to wake up this ancient energy in our bodies. I mean, this is an amazing experience to live here in this dimension and to have all of this ancient history that leads to serpent worship, that leads you to realize that the snake at one point in time was the foundation of religion here in this world, whether you want to believe that or not. The snake has always been venerated. So where was I going with that, ladies and gentlemen? Looks like we're about 26 minutes into this video. I mean, this is just an incredible experience. To be alive, to be in this world that we've all been indoctrinated into. We've all been brainwashed, separated from the truth, and we have the ability to pursue the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail, ladies and gentlemen, the chalice is your human body. It's not some physical object like you see in the Indiana Jones films that's hidden in some dungeon somewhere. Everybody has the ability to attain the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail is filled with an elixir, is it not? And that elixir is restorative. Well, your body right now is a cup, metaphorically speaking, that has no Kundalini moving through it. When the Kundalini moves through your body, your cup is filled 10,000-fold, and it begins to spilleth over, as they say. What this represents is a continual flow, ladies and gentlemen. When a cup spills over and it continues to spill over, it means there's a source that's pumping more and more fluid into it to the point where it acts as a fountain. And what is the human body? Well, it's an energy pump. Whether you believe that or not, the human body is a fountain contained within a vacuum of sorts here in this quantum vortex of a world that we live in. And this body within it has a spine, various organs, glands, you name it. Hormones, blood. It's a pump. We circulate fluids that get cleansed and renewed. We are a walking pump, ladies and gentlemen. Now, within our cerebral spinal system, we have a energetic channel that's known as the Shashumna. And the Shashumna is the main primary energetic channel that the Kundalini moves up. Once the pelvic floor is awakened and the twin serpents start rising up the spine. As I mentioned earlier, you have the spine, then you have the Ida, the Pingala, and then you have the Shashumna. Please look at the screen right now if you're not doing so you can have an accurate depiction of what I'm talking about. This Shashumna energy channel has the ability, as well as the other nadis and the various energy vortices within the body, to constantly recycle and restore and pump and flow. And why am I saying this? I'm saying this because this is the symbolism of the cup flowing over, the chalice, the fountain of youth. What do you think the fountain of youth is, ladies and gentlemen? It's not some fountain in some far-off land that's guarded by elves, fairies, and gnomes. The fountain of youth is your human body. I mean, think about how ridiculous it is that we've been led astray, that we've bought into the idea that for those who do believe that there's a fountain of youth, that it's in some far-off land. How is a fountain going to compare to your miraculous human body that is made in the image of God? How can we mistake a fountain for being more divine and having more power over our human body than our own goddamn human body? Wake the hell up. Now, it's our own fault for buying in to the mind control about things like the Holy Grail and the Fountain of Youth, because we're symbol illiterate. When we watch these films, when we read these books, you name it, it's symbolism. But people take things literally, just like the Bible, and suddenly people are believing that a fountain is some fountain in some far-off land guarded by golden hippos is the excuse me, is what we need to, to reach immortality or all this other stuff. No. Symbols lead in directions, ladies and gentlemen. They lead you in a direction. Now, I'm not saying that there might not be in some hidden part of the Earth here, because we are being lied about the geography here on Earth. I'm sure that there's parts of the world that have bodies of water that are incredibly restorative. Check out Admiral Byrd's description of the gigantic masses of land that were outside Antarctica. We'll talk about that in the near future, maybe. But where was I going with that, ladies and gentlemen? I mean, if you even read like Medicine Grizzly Bear Lake's book, Native Healer, he goes on to talk about how before the United States was taken over for the most part and destroyed via the Industrial Revolution, there were bodies of water in this world that you could go to that would cure you of anything for the most part. And I do believe that. We live in a magical world that has had this Martian-like matrix system installed in it. And we've had every part of our divinity stolen from us, ladies and gentlemen. This is not a joke. This is not a drill. And if you are not pissed off about this, then there's probably something wrong with you. We have been kept in the dark and we've bought into it. We've been sold a bill of goods and we've gone along with the script. And we've developed these gigantic egos. It's just incredible. So I don't know if let's try moving that so that the light isn't too bright, ladies and gentlemen, so that we have a decent picture. We'll add a little bit of the sun in over here. I suggest that you look at that. But again, the symbolism of the Fountain of Youth is the spine and all of the nadis in these different energy portals, ladies and gentlemen, within our own human body that have the ability to recirculate, repump, and rejuvenate all of our tissues and move through us and act like a literal pump. It's all about the Kundalini energy. I've been saying this for the last 10, 11 years. I even said it on my original channel that I had before I got rid of it to make the Sacred Serpent channel. Why do you think my channel is called Sacred Serpent? It's because the serpent is sacred. Read Philip Gardner's book, The Serpent Grail. Read Philip Gardner's book, Gnosis. He goes on to accurately portray in The Serpent Grail that pretty much the foundation of every major religion was the serpent, was the snake, because of what it represented, ladies and gentlemen. Not only did it represent a Fucus, the third sign of the zodiac, ladies and gentlemen, but it also represented the Kundalini energy. First and foremost, it represented the Kundalini energy, and most of the, were they called Ophidians? I can't remember off the top of my head. We'll get into that in part 2. Not only did the Kundalini represent not only did the serpent represent the Kundalini to the ancient civilizations, they knew that the snake was the most magical creature in animal kingdom, the reptile kingdom. And that's a secret that I've never heard anyone in the modern era talk about other than me. And it's not a bragging right, ladies and gentlemen, but it is 100% true that the snake, and I've said this in a handful of my old videos, and I'll continue to say it because it is 100% unadulterated truth. The snake has the ability to perform Shaktipat on the human body. Shaktipat is the transmission of Kundalini energy from one organism to another. Serpents have the ability. They exist within a larger bandwidth of the electromagnetic spectrum. They are in two worlds at once, and they have the ability to weave light at the tip of their tongues and project it like discs into your chakras, and they have the ability through doing that to unlock your chakras and move Kundalini energy. This is how I first experienced Kundalini in my early 20s on the cusp of Easter. Cusp of Easter morning, it was about 11:50 p.m. and I experienced Kundalini as the day transitioned into Easter, the rebirth. I'm not going to talk about that in this video, ladies and gentlemen, but Kundalini is the Christ energy, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just going to say that. It's the secret of what Christ is, but that's besides the point, and so many people don't want to hear that. But where was I going with all this, ladies and gentlemen? Excuse me. The foundation of every major legitimate religion has been the serpent. Now, when the New World Order got together a lot longer ago than most people realize, they decided to go on a campaign to destroy the symbol of the serpent and to invert it, to make it look evil. You see, in this world, up is down, left is right, what's good is bad, and what's bad is good. We live in an inverted world, ladies and gentlemen. And now, here in 2020, we are experiencing the byproduct of an aeon of serpent bastardization. The symbol of the serpent has been bastardized. And most people don't even realize that Archangel Michael is a symbol of the Kundalini. He's not actually killing the dragon, ladies and gentlemen, that you see him driving the spear into. Wake up! He's taming the dragon. The spear that he holds, or the sword in some depictions, represents his will, as well as his spine, which the serpent or the dragon rises up. Archangel Michael, the symbolism, is a depiction of the Kundalini energy, ladies and gentlemen. His spear is a more modern version of what's known as the Vel Spear, which is a giant gold rod that many deities have been seen holding, that has a almost like a peacock-shaped gold leaf at the top that is sharp and made of metal alloy. The gold represents the Christ consciousness, the raising serpents, the spear represents the spine, and the leaf-shaped object at the top, ladies and gentlemen, of this symbolic gem represents the awakened consciousness, the Kundalini, the Christ consciousness, which has the ability now to pierce the veil and see past the blinders that we've allowed into our lives via the repositioning of the assemblage point, yada, yada, yada. Archangel Michael is a later depiction of Mithra. Mithra, again, as I mentioned earlier, was a depiction of an even earlier deity, which came down from, I believe, I don't want to get too much into the planetary lore, ladies and gentlemen, but I believe from Venus to, if you follow the biblical stories, which personally I think it's a symbol. We'll talk about that in the near future, excuse me. This earlier deity, which I'll put a depiction of on the screen right now, was sent down to Earth under directive of his divine mother to wake up Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. This earlier deity, which you see on the screen right now, which I mentioned earlier, the name of, etc., arrived as a serpent. Now, this has a lot to do with the Mayan, the great serpent of the sky, you name it. There's so many things that could be said about this, but let's try to stay on point. This serpent is the Kundalini energy, ladies and gentlemen, and the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the Garden of Eden is the Kabbalistic tree of life to a large extent. And there's even, if you do deeper symbolism, it has a lot to do with what's known as the tree of death, which is accessed through a region on the Kabbalistic tree of life known as Thoth. This is where the name Darth Vader comes from, ladies and gentlemen. Darth Vader is first of all, the original Star Wars were all about Gnosticism and the Kabbalistic tree of life. The new Star Wars suck. It's an absolute embarrassment what has been done to those films. It is absolutely vile. Mainstream Hollywood is disgusting. Darth Vader is a symbol of Thoth. Thoth is a part on the Kabbalistic tree of life, which you're seeing on the screen right now. There's a path, a hidden door on the Kabbalistic tree of life that leads to what's known as the dark side of the Force, which is the opposite side of the tree of life, also known as the tree of darkness or the tree of death. This is why Darth Vader or Darth Vader represents the Sith or the opposite side of the Force. Sith has a lot to do with the name Seth, and Seth goes back to serpent. There's just everywhere. I'm not going to get into all of it in this video, excuse me. I want to try to keep this under an hour, this first piece. I brought up the Qlipphoth, which is known as, there's the Kabbalistic tree of life, and then there's what's known as the Qliphothic tree of life, or the Qlipphoth. We'll talk about that in the near future. I brought up the Kabbalistic tree of life because it has a lot to do with the story, the allegory, the metaphor, the symbolism of the Garden of Eden, which the entire Garden of Eden story, Genesis and the Bible, is a story about processes that are going on within your human physiology, ladies and gentlemen, and it's pretty easy to see once you start waking up. The 33 steps on the stairway to heaven are the 33 vertebrae of the human spine. The 12 apostles of Christ are not only the 12 zodiac signs, which have to do with your organs, your body, you name it, but they're also, ladies and gentlemen, the 12 cranial nerves of the brain. And when the 12 main cranial nerves of the brain wake up, you experience what's known as Christ consciousness. This is when you literally take what's known as the 13th step. I find it really interesting that A Perfect Circle has a album called 13th Step, because the 13th step is when the 12 cranial nerves wake up, ladies and gentlemen, and you take the 13th step into real manhood or womanhood. This is called becoming the Christ, being anointed with the holy oil, the cerebral spinal fluid that climbeth up the spine, the river Jordan, and separates the Red Sea, which are the blood vessels in your back, as it climbs up and gets crucified at the space of the skull by the medulla oblongata, and then rises into your head. I mean, come on, you've been lied to about religion, ladies and gentlemen, and I have no patience for it anymore. If you're offended by this, or if you want to go trust the Bible literally, then go ahead. But there is so much symbolism in the Bible showing that it is a encoded manual of the human body and the awakening of the Kundalini energy. Now, obviously, I don't buy into all of it. I do indeed believe that the God of the Old Testament is the demiurge, just like the Gnostics said, which, you know, the demiurge is just a fancy name for what the Greeks called cosmic raider, or, you know, or what I call the Archon. And the Archon, the God of the Old Testament, is the one who rules the roost here, the one who runs the show, who wants you to have faith in him and believe that he's the only way to heaven and all this other nonsense. You're going to tell me that you're going to have blind faith in some deity, which if you study this deity does a lot of harm to innocent people. You're going to trust him to get you into heaven? What a selfish thing for one, to play all my cards right so I can get into heaven. Get real. Now again, there's some obvious contradictions in the stuff that I'm talking about, but if you read a little bit closer between the lines, you'll begin to understand that there is stuff, even though mainstream religion is totally whitewashed and bastardized, there's stuff in the Bible that can be used to your advantage that is symbol abundant. Now, when I say that I think that the Bible is evil and mainstream Christianity is evil, I believe that what it has become is 100% evil. That does not mean that the Bibles and the books and the texts that they study are necessarily completely evil, because there's symbolism in them that is monumental. But most Christians don't even read their Bibles, and on top of that, they're not even familiar with the symbolism and what it represents. So we really need to, if we want to wake up from this matrix, become more not symbol illiterate, symbol literate. We need to be able to see things that are right in front of our eyes. They hide everything right in front of us, ladies and gentlemen. It's just done through symbols. But since you're taught to not register symbols with your conscious mind, you just absorb everything through via your subconscious mind, and, you know, so the wheel turns. Let's look at the, I mean, even like, let's just go back to the Star Wars thing, which has a lot to do with Kundalini. There were groups in Egypt known as the Djed, or the Jedi, D-J-E-D-I. These were individuals who venerated the Gnostic current of waking up the Kundalini. The Jedi, D-J-E-D-I, the Djed pillar. Look it up. The hell is the name of the director of the Star Wars films? George Lucas knew what was up. You even have, ladies and gentlemen, in the original Star Wars film, you have two opposing forces, right? You have the good guys and the bad guys, the light side of the Force and the dark side of the Force. This represents the two pillars out of the three main pillars on the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. Look on the screen right now for further verification. These two pillars, you can take this image, the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, and macro-impose it on the human body. And suddenly it represents a handful of different things. It also represents the dynamic polarity, if you will, of the Ida and the Pingala Nadi nerve channels that the Kundalini moves up. This is what creates kind of like an opposing force, like an electrical conduit. You have the positive and negative force on an electrical, in an electrical sense, of these two pillars, which represent the Ida and the Pingala. Please look at the screen right now for further verification. And then you have the main pillar, ladies and gentlemen, that the Kundalini energy rises up like an energy conduit, because you have to have the positive and negative force to create that energy conduit. I hope that makes sense. But again, just to dovetail that and finish that up, Star Wars has a lot to do with the Tree of Life. And the Kabbalistic Tree of Life comes from something much more ancient. It comes from the, we can even trace it as far back as ancient Egypt. We can trace it as far back, ladies and gentlemen, even to ancient Sumer. And I believe there's even depictions, correct me if I'm wrong, of a more there's depictions of the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, or what we look at now as the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. There's depictions of this tree on the cuneiform tablets, or not the cuneiform tablets. I can't remember the exact name of the tablets from ancient Sumer that depict the Anunnaki and whatnot. Zechariah Sitchin goes into deep detail about this in his books, such as, but not limited to, the Genesis Revisited. He's got an entire series on Sumer, the Anunnaki, you name it. So this Kabbalistic tree, I call it the Kabbalistic tree because that's the most modern version of it. It's referred to as the Kabbalistic tree. It has its roots are pretty much in Jewish mysticism, but this Kabbalistic tree is a blueprint of how your human body works, as well as the universe that you live in. But that's besides the point. My point here is, ladies and gentlemen, is that this symbol represents Kundalini. In fact, why don't you do yourself a favor and go to Google right now and type in Kabbalistic tree serpent. The Kabbalistic tree is often depicted with a serpent going from the bottom Sephiroth, and the Kabbalistic tree is composed of multiple spheres known as Sephira or Sephiroth. They're connected, they're representative, or they're symbolic, these spheres, of the planetary bodies. It's also representative of the tarot deck, ladies and gentlemen, and the Jewish alphabet. Most people don't realize that the tarot is actually a physical map of this tree. But where was I going with that, ladies and gentlemen? If you look at the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, at the bottom of the middle pillar, there's there's a sphere at the very bottom that's usually depicted in an encircled cross with 4 sections. This is known as Malkuth. This represents the earth realm. And the snake usually is wrapped around this Sephira and climbs up the Kabbalistic tree until it reaches the top. This is representing the Kundalini waking up. In fact, the Kabbalistic Tree of Life is a map that you can use to actually wake up the Kundalini. Imagine that. And you can pathwork up the pillars of this tree and work with the angelic kingdom that are contained therein. I mean, this is where and what's beautiful about this, ladies and gentlemen, is that this Kabbalistic Tree of Life fits inside of the flower of life. It fits inside the seed of life. These geometric patterns, which we find in ancient Egypt, yes, there are what appear to be laser printed or laser carved depictions of the flower of life in ancient Egypt. Read Drunvalo Melchizedek's book, The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life, Volume 1, for more verification on that. But this particular symbol, the flower of life, the seed of life, etc., it's contained within your cells. It is the actual biological, anatomical, spiritual blueprint that spirit uses to weave matter from light, from thought, if you will. Now, obviously, a lot more can be said about that, and I don't want to get into a huge rambling about it, but it's the truth regardless. The flower of life contains all of the 5 platonic solids. It's the map that what I like to call God uses to create matter. And the tree of life represents the condensing from the top Sephira of all of the cosmic energies being condensed into physical form, which you find in Malkuth. Now, some of this stuff may not make a lot of sense. We'll talk more about it in the near future. I want you to keep listening to this, however, because it's important that you hear it. Now, there's also something, and I'm going to show you on the screen right now, in the realm of Kabbalah, known as the Flaming Sword. And the Flaming Sword starts at the top Sephira, and it moves down the Tree of Life until it exits Malkuth. This has a lot to do with the biblical story of the angels with flaming swords being positioned at the gates of Eden. Now, there's also again, as I mentioned earlier, there's a dark side of the tree. known as the Qlipphoth Tree of Life. This is really important that you get acquainted with as well. Regardless of what all these people say about how it's evil and all this nonsense, to look at one side of the tree without acknowledging the other is absolute foolishness, and it's called being imbalanced. So in part 2 of this, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go deep into discussing symbolism of Kundalini, whether it be through the Caduceus, the Vel Spear, the Thyrsus, ladies and gentlemen, also known as the Thyrsus by some, Poseidon's staff. What about Shiva's staff? What about the, there's just so many of them, excuse me. There are so many symbols leading to this energy. It's the most important energy in the world, ladies and gentlemen, and this is why all of our ancient civilizations and the cultures, etc., venerated it so much. It's not because it wasn't important. It's because it's the foundation of life. Kundalini is the foundation of life that bringeth light into the world, ladies and gentlemen. What do you think the Christ is? Christ is an energy. It's the Kundalini rising. And as I've said in many of my videos, the Kundalini energy, which is a very motherly type energy, awakens in our pelvic floor, which is the throne of God, which is why you see so many ancient depictions of kings and queens sitting on a throne. That represents the coccyx, the pelvic floor. But when this energy awakens, it awakens the Christ consciousness, which is the rising Kundalini, and when the rising Kundalini gets into the brain, you experience Christ consciousness, and through that you get to know God. Just like people say that only through Christ do you know God. Well, it's true. It's just not true in the way that you most likely think it is. But again, that is why you see the kings, ladies and gentlemen, ancient depictions of Shiva or whatever on certain thrones, sitting down with a spear in their hand. They're sitting down on their throne with a spear because that's symbolic of mastery over the lower bone system of the body, the lower chakra system, which I like to call the chakras pylons. It represents dominion over their lower animal nature. You see this depicted often with Archangel Michael subduing, if you will, the dragon. Now, obviously, some people have taken the once accurate symbolism of Michael and made these horrible depictions of him slaying dragons and actually killing the dragon, if you will. But it's more about the original images were more about subduing his lower nature, ladies and gentlemen. And again, Archangel Michael is just one of many deities that symbolizes something much older. Snap out of your trance. Now, what most people refer to as Christ, let's just put it this way. The Gnostics knew, the ancient alchemists knew, that Christ was an energy that can be awoken within man and womankind, just like Christ says in the Bible, ye shall perform miracles greater than I. What do you think that means? It means that we have the ability to wake up the Kundalini just like he had awoken within in his system, excuse me. Snap out of your trance. The Gnostics knew what was up. So did the Maya, so did all of these other ancient civilizations that raised Kundalini. They just called it something different than, for instance, Christ consciousness. For instance, what about referring to it as the phoenix? What about referring to it as Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent? There's so many different names for this energy. So for you to get back there on your high horse and say that Christ is the only way to save your soul and that you have to worship Christ, well, before Christ even was a term, ladies and gentlemen, there were people that were experiencing this energy that were referring to it as something much different, but it was the same unifying body of energy. Snap out of your goddamn trance. And for you to tell people that, oh, the only way to save your soul is through Christ, even though you don't even know what Christ means. I mean, the narcissism and the egoism in mainstream religion is absolutely disgusting. You got a bunch of people who don't even know what Christ means or what it is, acting like you're going to go to hell if you don't adopt my belief systems. No, more like you're going to go to hell, or maybe you're already there. You're trapped inside of a doorway within a doorway within a doorway in your mind, and you're not even aware of the room that you're in your mind. Snap out of your bullshit, please. Now, as I was saying, What was I saying? Excuse me, folks. When the Kundalini awakens within you, it turns you into the conquering child of soul, also known as the sun. And this is largely why the sun is such a symbol of enlightenment. Not only does it bring light to the world that we live in, ladies and gentlemen, and give life to pretty much everything. I mean, imagine a life without the sun, but when the Kundalini awakens within you, your internal sun turns on. You see, you are designed to be a walking biological light bulb of sorts, ladies and gentlemen, an isolated unit in a quantum field within a unifying body of subtle energy known as a Merkaba or an aura. You are designed to bring light into the world, but the world has been shrouded in darkness. The world has been shrouded in darkness, ladies and gentlemen, and not darkness in the sense of, oh, it's dark out, blah, 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 or that this, that, and the other. So many people don't know what darkness actually means. Darkness is when things are veiled. We have had a veil pulled over us. And this is done through the repositioning of our energy field by way of relocation and refixing of something known as the assemblage point. I've talked about the assemblage point extensively in many of my videos. Go back and watch them to learn more. The assemblage point is an intimate part of our energy field that has the ability to move and relocate and fix into new positions based on what we're doing with our life, the traumas that we're exposed to, the mind control, the electromagnetic frequencies, you name it. We live in a world where by default, when you have your birth certificate printed and signed, for the most part, ladies and gentlemen, your assemblage point starts moving by default, because when you become a unit in the system, the matrix, when you become a documented human in the system, that means by default you're being tracked, and that you have to now you have to live your life while playing in the game of the matrix. So you're forced now, because you're a documented human, you're forced now to go to school. You're forced now to get unnecessary medical treatments. You're forced now to go see the school psychiatrist if anything goes wrong. God forbid you disobey your Lord and Savior, the school system. You're forced now to eat all of the garbage bullshit food, which is nutritionally just about as stable and abundant as a fucking piece of cardboard. You're forced now to listen to your parents, who most likely are brainwashed beyond measure. Your chances of waking up in this reality and actually igniting this Kundalini energy are very slim. The odds are stacked against you massively, but I love my odds. I love the fact that the system doesn't want me to do what I'm doing with my life. I love knowing that I have an enemy. I love my odds. And I love tapping into the deep, vast reservoir of symbolism of heroes like Thor and Apollo, ladies and gentlemen, and Horus and Perseus, who performed great accomplishments regardless of the pressure put on them by the collective weight of humanity and the world around them. That is what the hero is. The hero conquers odds, ladies and gentlemen. The hero doesn't look at the weight of the world, which is a symbolic metaphor that I use for the bullshit that comes down on us. The hero does not look at the weight of the world and get sad and depressed and oh my God, no. The hero uses it as a fuel source. You see, negativity and all this other garbage out here can actually be used as a fuel source. That's why I've always recommended that you familiarize, if I can speak today, yourself with the work of John Crider. For one, Vampire's Way is a great book, and there's a great book by him called Magnum Opus, which is a literal field guide manual to real alchemy. And he also has a great book called The Perfectionist, which is new. And he also has a great book called Overcoming the Archon Through Alchemy, ladies and gentlemen. I've been recommending that you pick up those books for a very long time now. You want to put yourself through school, unplug from the education system that's doing nothing to you other than stressing you out and keeping you up late at night so that you can remember a bunch of garbage factoids. that were funded by the Rockefeller, Ford, and Carnegie Foundations. They took over the school system in the early 1900s and completely rewrote history by doing so. You're not smart, you're a puppet. You're being educated by the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, the Round Table. The vampires, ladies and gentlemen. They're the ones who are educating the youth. Wake up, dummy. You want to put yourself through school. I have a long list of educational curriculum that I've been recommending for years. So, where the hell were we going with that? I don't even remember. Excuse me, guys. An hour into a video, I get a little, start to not necessarily wind down a bit, but I think you catch my drift. So, Kundalini energy is a very important thing. I cannot stress the importance of it enough. I've been talking about it non-stop for the last 10 years of my life, 11 years of my life. It's just this experience is incredible. But again, we've been hoodwinked, ladies and gentlemen. The matrix exists to take you out of alignment with this energy. You see, most people think of mind control as existing to just keep us easily managed. And although that's part of the overall scheme of the New World Order, the archons, ambassadors, you name it, the true overarching theme of the matrix, or the reason why the mind control exists, ladies and gentlemen, is to keep you away from the Kundalini energy and to keep you believing that the consciousness and the way that your body works now is all there is to life. Most people think that life is literally their job, their routine, you name it. Their social group, that's what their lives are. And these people live their lives under the jurisdiction of the definitions that they use to describe their world. I'm talking about their innermost definitions. And I don't really want to get into that, ladies and gentlemen, in this video, but essentially how you define yourself in the world that you live in dictates how you live your life. For instance, if you have a definition of life that tells you that what you're experiencing now is all there is to life and that Kundalini isn't real and that there's nothing more to life, there's nothing magical, and you actually believe that on a subconscious level, then you are bound and you are enslaved to that disgusting belief system that keeps you in a limited state and will most likely kill your monkey ass. Yes, when you believe you have limitations, ladies and gentlemen, you put yourself into a box where there could be a cure to something that you have right in front of you, but if it's outside of your definition, good luck integrating it, because you do not integrate things that are outside of your rigid belief systems. The matrix is designed to keep us away from the Kundalini energy, and that's why it always seeks to accelerate our aging and keep us in a state of accelerated entropy. That's why they want to get a hold of you and your children, and they want to force a bunch of strange medical treatments on them, ladies and gentlemen. That's why they want to get a hold of your baby boy or girl and start injecting them with God knows what, since from pretty much the time the poor kid comes out. I mean, you don't think that this has been done by design? If you don't believe that, then you are in the dark. And what is being in the dark, ladies and gentlemen? Like I said, it's called being veiled. And the matrix has kept us in the dark by limiting our ability to see into the full scope of the electromagnetic spectrum. You see, right now you're looking at my arm, right? But since we're in a state where we can only see hard physical objects, we can no longer see the condensed subtle energy around my arm. These states of energy, or the energy coming off my arm or anyone's body, can be seen only when the eyes are capable of piercing into the particular region of the electromagnetic spectrum where you can actually see heat signatures and auras, etc. I hope that makes sense. I really do hope that makes sense. So, piercing the veil. Let's take a look right now, ladies and gentlemen, of ancient symbolism, which represents being able to pierce into the veil, to lift the veil. Let's look at ancient depictions of deities that have multiple hands, multiple arms, and sometimes even multiple heads. What do you think that represents? This represents that their consciousness was in multiple places at once and that it was existing in the multi-dimensional field. This represents their ability, these enlightened deities, to not only be in the physical dimension, which is symbolic of the... When you look at an ancient depiction of a deity that has multiple heads and arms, ladies and gentlemen, the first part of the body, the innermost part of the body in front represents the physical body in the physical realm. Then you have heads and arms behind it. This represents their ability of their consciousness and their perception to grasp past the blinders of the electromagnetic spectrum and to be able to see into the multiple different dimensions, such as but not limited to the astral dimension, the causal dimensions, the etheric dimensions, ladies and gentlemen, the fourth and fifth dimensions, the angelic dimension, also known as the angelic kingdom, the Enochian realm, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, there are indeed things known as the angelic kingdoms, and people who experience Kundalini are more often than not visited by angels when they experience this energy. It's part of it, ladies and gentlemen. This is when the trumpets blow. This is when the 7 seals are unlocked, the 7 energy pylons, also known as chakras. What do you think they are talking about, ladies and gentlemen, in the book of Revelation when they talk about 7 trumpets blowing, 7 seals, the 7 candles, I believe, and the spine of the book? That's literally a quote from the book of Revelation. The back of the book, the spine of the book, that's the human spine, and sitting on the throne of God at the right hand, I believe, the right hemisphere of the brain and the left hemisphere of the brain have a lot to do with Kundalini, because when the energy gets up into the head, it bridges the schism between the right and the left lobe, and you now see through what's known as the one eye. Jesus talks about this. This is not some magical third eye, ladies and gentlemen. No. What is the real third eye? The third eye is when both lobes of your brain are now operating under the jurisdiction of Kundalini, when they're fused together, and you don't see things the way you did prior. You now see things through the lens of the enlightened eyeballs. This can only happen when the true Church of God, the human body, is ignited and illuminated via Kundalini. I've been saying this for years. But when the trumpets blow, ladies and gentlemen, when the 7 church bells ring, this is all symbolism of the Kundalini, the chakras waking up. You see, the chakras are the true churches of God. You're walking around in a temple that has multiple churches in it. And these chakras, ladies and gentlemen, when the Kundalini moves through each of them, it opens them up and they flower and they start to emit a resonance, a particular vibratory frequency of sound. That it's so high-pitched that it is off the range of hearing for people who are not experiencing Kundalini at the time when it wakens up, when it moves through their body. I don't have time to get into that right now. All I'm going to say is that when the Kundalini energy moves up the Shashumna and opens up the pump system of the chakras, each of them bloom and open, and they expand and spin in an outward direction. This not only unpacks your aura and your energy field, kind of like one of those books that you have, you know those books, pop-up books that you open and they open up? Well, that's kind of the same for the chakras. As they bloom and they counter-rotate, they expand outward and they emit a frequency. And this frequency literally summons the angelic kingdoms of each chakra church. This is a very important thing to understand, ladies and gentlemen. And unfortunately, the only way to truly understand this is to experience it. But chakras are much more than just these little, green and red things that the average person, excuse me, thought I heard something. The chakras are much more than just these depictions that are in New Age books. Chakras are very ancient. So I'm going to wrap this segment up, ladies and gentlemen. In part 2, we are going to go into depth about symbolism of Kundalini. I'm going to show you some symbols or some depictions of ancient cultures and their serpent edifices, their symbolism, you name it. Peace be with you. ladies and gentlemen. So what you just saw was a short montage of various deities and symbols that are associated with Kundalini. I could have made that video a literal hour and a half, 2 or 3 hours long. I mean, it could go on and on forever. There is so much serpent symbolism in our ancient past. So in further installments of this series, we'll go into deeper detail and we'll isolate maybe, for instance, serpent symbolism and Kundalini symbolism in ancient Greece. And then in one video, maybe we'll do ancient Egypt, and then we can look at the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Toltecs. I don't have time to get into the full scope of everything in this one video, but once all of these videos are compiled together, I'll mesh it together and make maybe like a 10-hour series, really decoding and demystifying the subject of Kundalini. So I want to start off with this segment. Now that you've watched that little musical intro with various deities, etc., draped in Kundalini symbolism and snakes, I want to start this section off by talking about a symbol known as the Caduceus, which you're seeing on the screen right now. The Caduceus is a staff with 2 serpents climbing up it, and oftentimes it is depicted with a bulb at the top, a bulbous kind of circular sphere, which represents the brain, the human brain. And then more often than not, you'll see the Caduceus with 2 angel wings coming out of it. Now, there are older depictions of the Caduceus where there aren't wings. Right now you're seeing a relatively modern version of the Caduceus. I'll show you ancient or older ones now, but more often than not, you'll see angel wings coming out of the top of the Caduceus. What this represents is the Christ consciousness taking flight. It represents your consciousness, the angel wings do, excuse me. It represents your consciousness ascending into the higher dimensions. What are wings, or what are feathers used for? Well, they're used to take flight, ladies and gentlemen, and that's exactly what happens when the Kundalini rises up the staff, which you see in the middle of the Caduceus. That's a staff that represents the spine, and the 2 snakes climbing up the staff, ladies and gentlemen, represent 2 particular pathways known as the Ida and the Pingala. These are positive and negative forces that create like an electrical conduit of sorts, or connection, that causes the Kundalini energy to rise up the Shashumna, which we already talked about in the prior segment, but I just wanted to kind of clarify things. There's 3 main channels, especially in Hindu mysticism. When it comes to the Kundalini, you have the Ida, the Pingala, and the Shashumna. The Shashumna is the main central channel that the Kundalini rises up, but it can only rise, ladies and gentlemen, when the negative and positive electrical forces of both of the Ida and the Pingala, those channels, create like a friction, a dynamic electricity polarity of sorts to cause the energy to rise up the Shashumna. So that's what you see on this depiction of the Caduceus. You see a main channel, a staff, which is the spine. You see 2 serpents, which represent the lunar and solar, the lunar and the solar forces, the Ida and the Pingala, ladies and gentlemen. These 2 channels that the Kundalini rise up. So there's 3 main channels. Again, there's the Ida, the Pingala, and the Shashumna. And again, these 2 snakes that you see on this symbol represent the Ida and the Pingala channels. Please look at the screen right now if you're listening to this for further verification. You really would do best by not only just listening to this video, but watching it, because I keep putting pictures and stuff and slides on the screen for simplicity, to make understanding this a little bit easier. So the Caduceus, ladies and gentlemen, is a really important, very valid symbol for so many different things. It's been adopted by mainstream medicine, and I don't even think most doctors have even the slightest iota of an idea of what it even represents. I really don't believe that most doctors have a solid foundation of understanding of why the Caduceus is used as a symbol of medicine. It's used as a symbol of medicine because Kundalini is the full expression of our health, ladies and gentlemen. You see, real true health is enlightenment, and enlightenment is Kundalini. We were designed to be enlightened on a consistent daily basis. We've fallen from that state of grace, and now we operate in what I call the land of the bottom feeder. So true health is the path of awakening these energies so that we can get back on track with what we were designed to experience, what we were designed to do. Our body and our mind was designed to be able to carry the electrical wattage of the Kundalini energy, ladies and gentlemen. And this symbol, the Caduceus, is a perfect rubric or example of this. Our body was designed to have these 3 channels activated. And as I mentioned in the prior segment, ladies and gentlemen, when these three channels are activated, your body becomes a fountain of youth, a self-recycling, self-maintaining system that pumps vital life force energy, the Christ oil, through the machine, our body, and keeps us enlightened. So there's so many things that could be said about the Caduceus. I don't want to stay on this too long because I don't want to be repetitive. The Caduceus is kind of like an evolved version of the rod of Asclepius, which oftentimes you'll see on like veterinary clinics. You'll see on the wall of a certain veterinary clinics, you'll see a staff with one serpent rising up it. This is just a more primitive and less symbolically rich version of the Caduceus. Personally, I respect it. I think it's a little flawed, however, because in order for you to actually represent Kundalini properly, you kind of need to have both serpents on there, because there are three main channels: the Ida, the Pingala, and the Shashumna. And if you look at the rod of Asclepius, it lacks that symbolism. I hope that makes sense. It does, however, if you choose not to overanalyze it, it is a very valid symbol of Kundalini, because you have a staff, a rod, which is symbolic of the spine, and then you have a snake wrapping around it. So, again, this is kind of also, ladies and gentlemen, the rod of Asclepius is kind of a, I don't want to call it more advanced, but it's very similar to the Spear of Vel, which I'm going to show you on the screen right now, which is a staff, a rod, a golden rod, and at the tip of the rod there is a peacock feather looking almost point. This represents the spine, and the point at the end represents the awakened consciousness. So again, these symbols are not meant to be taken literally, ladies and gentlemen. They represent bigger things. As I mentioned in the prior segment, symbols lead in a particular direction. Your mind kind of has to fill in the blanks. Throughout history, things have been symbolized, things have been categorized as symbols because not only do they become very monumental for the subconscious, because again, the language of the subconscious is symbolism. Not all of it, but a large majority of the language of the subconscious is symbolism, ladies and gentlemen. But there were periods in time as well where information could be hidden out in plain sight through symbolism. I hope that makes sense. So if you put a symbol out there that only a few people understand, or only those who look to try to uncover what the symbol represents, then you can plaster things right out in front of everybody and it will go right over their heads. For instance, how many people drive by, you know, a veterinary clinic and see the rod of Asclepius and don't even put two and two together? How many people go to a doctor and see a doctor with a white coat on with a Caduceus on it and don't even put two and two together? So these symbols have monumental weight to them because they represent very profound things, ladies and gentlemen. Kundalini at one point in time was so profound and such a part of, it was so interwoven into the fabric of the human existence that somehow, some way, through all this time, the symbol of Kundalini is worn by the crest, or on it's worn by medical doctors, mainstream medical doctors. Somehow, some way, through all the trials and tribulations that have happened here in this dimension, the symbol that represents enlightenment is worn on the coat of the New World Order priests for the medical establishment, and they more often than not do not even know what it represents. I have yet to meet one doctor who knows what that symbol actually truly represents. And as I mentioned in the past segment, that symbol goes way back to ancient Sumer, ladies and gentlemen, and in my opinion, all the way back to Atlantis and beyond. This symbol represents the progression of energy through specific channels that are hardwired into our physiology. It is literally a basic symbolic blueprint of an energetic pathway in your body that keeps you alive. Or, you know, like in today's world, it's not even active for the most part. We have a very small amount of Kundalini moving through us, ladies and gentlemen. So that wraps up this segment about the Caduceus, which again, and the rod of Asclepius, which are both very, very valid symbols of enlightenment. And we also touched upon the spear. I mean, if you look at Poseidon's trident, ladies and gentlemen, that is Kundalini Symbolism 101. And Poseidon, he reigned in the water, did he not? Well, what do the waters represent? The waters represent the subconscious, the deep waters. The subconscious is the deep aspects of your mind that you don't go swimming in. Most of us here in the Matrix, we have no connection to our subconscious mind, ladies and gentlemen. Poseidon is the god of the subconscious. He is Poseidon is an archetype for the individual who conquers or awakens and works with his or subconscious and awakens the power contained therein. The tip of the trident, folks, it has 3 points. Ida, Pingala, Shashumna, the 3 main channels that the Kundalini moves through. Now there's way more than 3 channels, ladies and gentlemen. There are multiple channels in our bodies that vital life force energy moves through. These are known as meridians. These are basically energy highways that subtle energy moves through. But within and without and around the cerebral spinal system, there's many channels, ladies and gentlemen. You have literal chakras on your fingers. Every little point of your body, every different minute particle that makes you who you are is a vast energetic portal. And you are contained, these portals are contained by your luminous cocoon, also known as your subtle organizing energy fields. You are literally like a walking vacuum contained within an energetic egg in a quantum vortex. And this Kundalini energy is designed by the Creator to move through us. And when it moves through us, it keeps us connected to the Creator, ladies and gentlemen. This is what the Gnostics called the spark. The Kundalini is the spark that can awaken and turn into a fire. It's kind of like that Tool song, Intention. Spark becomes a flame, flame becomes a fire. That is so absolutely true. The Kundalini is the Promethean fire that was stolen by the gods, by Prometheus, to be given to man. What do you think the movie The Matrix is about, ladies and gentlemen? The movie The Matrix is a modern, futuristic style, dystopian era representation of Gnostic truths. The red pill is literally the apple of Eden. Morpheus is the serpent, Lucifer. Eve leads Neo, who is Adam, to Morpheus, who is the serpent. And just like in the Bible, in the story of the Garden of Eden, Trinity, in those movies, she was already conscious. She had already bitten the red pill, or the apple. She had eaten the apple already, just like in the Bible. So Trinity, who is already conscious, just like Eve, leads Adam, who is Neo, to Morpheus, who is the serpent. And if you even stop the film and look at Morpheus's black leather coat, it looks like snake skin, it looks like reptile skin, it looks like crocodile skin. There's a reason for this, ladies and gentlemen. It's pointing in the direction of the serpent. There's also a point where when Neo first meets Morpheus, when Morpheus turns around by that window in the building that he meets him in, there's a giant lightning bolt that strikes. This represents Prometheus, ladies and gentlemen. Electricity, thunder and lightning is also a very profound symbol of the awakened Uraeus, the awakened Kundalini. The Uraeus is what the Egyptians called the Kundalini energy, ladies and gentlemen. Every culture has a different name for this same energy, ladies and gentlemen. That's why all religions, for the most part, have a very similar motif, an underlying current. But again, Morpheus offers Adam the red pill, which is the apple of Eden. And he takes it, and he knows now what's good, what's bad, what's right, and what's wrong. You see, a lot of people saw that movie, and that went right over their head. That symbol alone, the symbolism in that 10-minute clip where he takes the red pill is profound. Is absolutely profound, ladies and gentlemen. The architect in that movie, The Matrix, that controls the regulation of the agents is the demiurge, the god of the Old Testament. Cosmic creator, as the Greeks called him. The Archon. You've got to go back and watch these films, folks. It's crucial. So, the Caduceus is a profound symbol. The rod of Asclepius is a profound symbol. The trident that Poseidon held was a profound symbol leading in the direction of the Kundalini. Because the Kundalini, in the same way that Poseidon represents the subconscious, which is why he's depicted in the water, the depths, that which is beneath, and the subconscious lies behind your conscious mind. It's the deep parts of your consciousness, your mind, that you don't have contact with anymore. It's also known as the abyss or hell. The true hell is not an evil place, ladies and gentlemen. It is the abyss, the darkness of your mind that you are no longer in contact with. The Kundalini, when it wakes up, it takes everything out of the subconscious and integrates it into your conscious mind, and that is when you experience true power. True power comes from the awakened Kundalini energy, ladies and gentlemen, and a huge part of the power that is reacquired from this energy moving is derived directly from the acquisition of the power of the subconscious mind coming into the overall picture, integrating with your conscious mind. This is so crucial to understand. Shiva is depicted, ladies and gentlemen, with a trident more often than not. Shiva also wears a goddamn cobra around his neck. This is all Kundalini symbolism, ladies and gentlemen. Even certain branches of Satanism use the Caduceus as a symbol, and not all forms of Satanism are evil, ladies and gentlemen. That's a whole different video for a different rant, but so many people are unable to realize that simple truth. We'll talk more about that in the near future, but some Luciferian or Satanistic groups use a modified Caduceus, where instead of calling the two energy pathways the Ida and the Pingala, they refer to it as Samael and Lilith. So there's so much that could be said about this, ladies and gentlemen. That symbol alone is so absolutely crucial. Go look in ancient Greece at all the symbolism, the statues with serpents. Kundalini is the energy, it is the fire of the gods, ladies and gentlemen. It is the fire of the gods. So let's wrap this segment up and let's move on to the next segment. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this next segment. This might be the final segment in this installation, and then afterwards I'll show you guys some depictions of pictures and videos, maybe, you name it. In this video, in this segment, I want to talk about the Grail, the fountain. The fountain is a symbol of the Kundalini. The fountain is a self-regenerating system. Water flows through it, it goes back into a collection of water, and then it gets pumped back through the system. The fountain and the Grail are very profound symbols, ladies and gentlemen, because they lead you to very specific understandings. The human body is the chalice, it is the fountain of youth, it is the Holy Grail. You see, for the longest time we've been programmed to look outside of ourselves for divinity instead of looking inward. And this is really why I wanted to bring the Grail up and the fountain again, even though we talked about it in the first segment. There's a huge schism between our we have this issue here in the Matrix where we've been programmed for so long to look outside of ourselves for divinity that we never spend any time looking inward. And if we looked inward more than we look outward, I think that we'd come to huge, just radical realizations, ladies and gentlemen, about how divine we actually are. You see, mainstream religion has taught us that there's an entity outside of ourselves that's constantly looking at us and judging all of our actions. And instead of us using our own moral code that we've developed by going inward to gauge what is right and wrong, we fear some predatory entity out in the ether somewhere that's invisible, that never presents itself to us, and we do things that we think it wants us to do so that hopefully we can get to the pearly gates when we die. It's an absolute ridiculous model. It either needs to pass on or it needs to evolve. Divinity is within you, ladies and gentlemen. The true living God is within you. Even the Bible admits that when it says that you are created in the image of the Creator. That means that you are a walking little creator. We were all designed to be little Jesus Christ, ladies and gentlemen. If you look into the research of a researcher named Bobby Hemmett, he goes on in one of his amazing lectures to talk about how the words, the name Jesus Christ can be broken down to body and spirit. Jesus means body, Christ means spirit. That means body anointed with spirit. Was it not Jesus who said that ye shall perform miracles greater than I? That means that we have the ability to wake up what he had woken up that made him the enlightened healer that he was, ladies and gentlemen. We can all be Jesus Christ, body anointed with spirit. Kundalini moves through our body, and that's the spirit that animates our body. And when the Kundalini animates our body with spirit, we become the walking Holy Grail. We become the walking fountain of youth that is contained within in a set of energy known as an aura, a Merkaba. And in the next installment of this series, I'm going to be talking about the Merkaba, because the Merkaba has been mentioned hundreds of times throughout religious texts, ladies and gentlemen, and it is directly tied to the Kundalini energy. In fact, the true path to waking up the Merkaba is to wake up the Kundalini energy, ladies and gentlemen, and it's done through the tip of the tongue. That is an occult secret that nobody is talking about. And that is one of the ways that I know a lot of the people preaching all this spirituality are full of shit. One of the direct pathways into opening up, not only waking up Kundalini, but waking up the Merkaba so that it's actually visible around you and active, is through the tip of your tongue. I don't really want to get into that in this video. I've talked about it extensively in previous videos, but there are mechanisms when the Kundalini starts to awaken that take over the motor control over your tongue. Your tongue starts to perform yoga uncontrollably, and it rubs specific meridian points within your mouth that are connected to your brain. This is why there's so much symbolism, ladies and gentlemen, in the serpent's tongue. A lot of people aren't aware of the fact that there is deep symbolism in the hissing of snakes. The serpent's tongue represents the Kundalini taking over the motor skills of your tongue when the Kundalini starts moving through your body. You see, certain mechanisms take place when you awaken Kundalini, or when it awakens within you, that take over control of your body. And this is one of the reasons why this divine energy has been misregarded by the unconscious masses as being a form of possession. Your muscles might start twitching uncontrollably as they lock into new and foreign installations in different positions. Your spine might gyrate uncontrollably. Your head might shake uncontrollably. Your arms might shake uncontrollably. You might feel motivated, or your mouth just might open and your tongue might stick out. You might lock yourself into spontaneous yoga positions, ladies and gentlemen, uncontrollably. And it is not that you are being possessed. It's that this energy is waking up your body, and your body is doing what it needs to do so that you don't get in the way of the Kundalini rising. Hope that makes sense. In the same way that you can't control your heartbeat, you can't control, you don't control the metabolic processes in your body. You don't even control your breathing. Something breathes you. Something is constantly keeping you alive. You have no clue how your liver works. You have no clue how your heart pumps blood. It just does it for you. But for some reason, even though people understand that basic truth, when the Kundalini moves through their system, people's system, and it starts taking over their body and starts doing things uncontrollably, and you can't stop it, people seem to think that that's demonic possession. Well, is it demonic possession that your body breathes naturally? You're not in control of every breath. You're not in control of how your thyroid works. There is an underlying current of energy that is keeping you alive, ladies and gentlemen. Kundalini is our way out of this system. It purges, it detoxifies, it uplifts, but it also destroys. And this is why so many people, especially people programmed by mainstream Christianity, have a problem with this. Not only is it riddled with serpent symbolism, and most programmed people think the serpent is evil, but it causes you to confront things that mainstream religion allows you to just put into the hands of God. Just put it in the hands of God. All you've got to do is have faith in Jesus. All you've got to do is have faith in this, that, and the other. Everything else will be taken care of. Mainstream religion has promised you a free and easy ticket to the pearly gates, but it never inspires you, for the most part, to integrate the principles of the true living Jesus Christ that is contained within you, to change and to be that which you're reading about, ladies and gentlemen. What's more potent? What would a God actually want? For you to just read the dead scriptures of old pages of books? And to just, oh, I put everything into the hands of Jesus. Or that God want you to be a good person, to be like Jesus, to be like any of these glorified deities that represent, you know, the Kundalini rising, like Perseus, you name it. You see, a lot of people just stop their religious path with mainstream, with their holy books. I read my Bible, I stay faithful. It's like, no, we have to take into, if we want to truly be religious individuals, ladies and gentlemen, you don't just get to read, you don't just have to read it, you have to live it. Only through living it does the true book of life, the true living Bible, the true holy book wake up, which is your body, your mind, which is the literal flesh library, the housing of your spirit. But right now, they've got you thinking that that holy book is more divine than your own body. Even though your body is made in the image of the Creator, it is a living miracle. You cannot reproduce a human body. Well, you can, but I'm talking about scientists just can't go in a lab and put some potions together and make a body. It is a miracle of life. It is worth more than the most precious gems in the deepest caverns of the earth. But mainstream religion has got you believing that that book that you read is more divine than you, that that's the way out. No, your body is the living library of the true living God, ladies and gentlemen, the monad. The tree of life contained within you. That's your way out. That is the true living book of Christ. Yes, we can use, I don't even want to get into that, ladies and gentlemen, excuse me. I'm just amazed at how misled people have been by religion. And that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to mind control here, ladies and gentlemen. Mainstream religion has got you looking outside of yourself to find something that isn't there. The true book of life has to be opened in order for you to come to know God. It's called your body. It's insane. So hopefully the camera doesn't shut off. It's pretty hot out here, folks. Probably will. But I thank you for watching this far into this video. If you've watched this far in this video, that's awesome. You know, I make these videos, they don't get very many views, but I sure as hell love doing it. And I know that the few people who do watch these videos, especially to this length, this long into the video, I mean, that's awesome. Even if I only got a few people to do that, I would still make these videos. So this is going to be a continual series. But again, you are the fountain. And in the same way that mainstream religion has got people looking outside of themselves for something, for divinity, when they're actually, you're the object looking for yourself, you just don't know it. The whole holy fountain, or the fountain of youth symbolism, is the same. It's got you looking for a fountain outside of yourself. It's got you thinking that there might be some holy grail out there, and you know, even though it's you. Oh man. I just had something on the tip of my tongue, but I forgot what I was going to say, damn it, and it was really important. It was really, really important. So maybe we'll start wrapping this one up. Hopefully that will come to me in just a second, but if not, there's always time for more videos. Jesus Christ even said, ladies and gentlemen, be ye as wise as serpents. And, sorry, I just got an email. Jesus said, be wise as serpents and as gentle as doves. I believe that was the particular quote. You ever wonder why Jesus said, be wise as serpents? Do you think he just pulled that out of his ass? No, Jesus was an individual who knew that snakes were incredibly intelligent, that they had the ability to wake up Kundalini through Shaktipat. This is why you see all the Naga, ladies and gentlemen. Go look up the Nagas, N-A-G-A. Go look at Tibet. Go look in, I mean, it's everywhere, all this serpent symbolism. And all of the symbolism of snakes where you see half human, half snakes, what that represents is the Kundalini waking up within people. You are actually a hybrid, ladies and gentlemen. You are far more reptilian than you've been led to believe, but you've been lied to by the so-called experts, and they put you into a box. And again, just like mainstream religion has got you looking outside of yourself for the truth, they've got you looking to them for the truth instead of resorting to your own inner wisdom. But you don't know how to attain that inner wisdom anymore because you've been shut off from your mind. Because you've been led to believe that there's a bunch of experts out there that know what's best for you, and that you're basically an insignificant idiot who came here via the process of spontaneous evolution over a long period of time, and that you came from a monkey. They've got you acting like a monkey, and they're your zookeeper. It's time to snap out of it. Start taking care of your health. Start getting the medicinal mushrooms back into your system, ladies and gentlemen. Start equipping yourself with true wisdom. Wisdom is knowledge in action. You could read these books all day, you can do this, that, and the other, but unless you apply what you learn and do something with it, you will never attain wisdom. And if you do not practice wisdom by taking knowledge and applying it, there's never going to be any Kundalini stimulation in your system, ladies and gentlemen. I hate to say it. But nowadays, here in the Matrix, the key to success is just the remembering of factoids and going to school, and again, being programmed by the Rockefeller, Carnegie, Ford Foundation funded mainstream education outlets, the New World Order education program. Just remember a bunch of factoids. Don't be wise. Don't actually apply what you learn. It's hard to apply what you learn in the mainstream education system because you can't. It's just a bunch of factoids and bullshit. I don't even want to get into it, ladies and gentlemen. You see, our ancient ancestors, such as but not limited to the Egyptians, their schooling was much different. Let's take a look at the Temple of Karnak. Let's look at the mystery schools of ancient Egypt. The Temple of Karnak represented the human spine, and initiates that were allowed to go through the learning process of going through the Temple of Karnak and becoming initiated, they moved through in segments the Temple of Karnak and learned how to activate all the chakras as they progressed through this spine-shaped fucking temple. Ancient Egypt is rich in bodily symbolism, and what I mean by that is many of these ancient civilizations created edifices and temples that symbolized processes and organs in their own body and mind. And the magnitude of an effect that it has on your subconscious when you do that is profound. When you stand inside of a goddamn pyramid that represents the innermost portions of your brain, and you know all the mathematical proportions, and you know how it's connected to your body and the similar proportions, and you know what you're doing, that's true magic. What do you think the king and the queen's chamber in these pyramids represented, ladies and gentlemen? Why do you think these pyramids allowed certain amounts of light in that would hit mirrors and reflect and illuminate the entire pyramid? That represents light coming into the eyes and illuminating the brain, fool. Insane. And you might be thinking, oh, but ancient Egypt, look at it, it's just a bunch of rubbles. Have you ever seen depictions of what ancient Egypt used to look like before it was taken over, before it became just a mountainous... It's just rubble. It was looted, ladies and gentlemen. The ancient pyramids used to have perfectly flat faces with a capstone. Now all you see is a bunch of rubble. Ancient Egypt used to be a fucking paradise, a tropical paradise, believe it or not. It was lush. But they don't teach you that in the fucking history books. No, they want to program you. There's so much corruption in ancient Egyptology, it's insane. We are being lied to about the shape of this earth. And in my opinion, it looks like these pyramids, it looks like the shamans and whatnot were actually able to bilocate or teleport between them. And maybe they were also used to act as weights upon the earth to balance out the precession of the equinoxes. I'm not 100% sure. I don't buy into the round earth model per se, so I don't want to go into a whole rant about the yugas, the Kali Yuga, and all the precession of the equinoxes and the importance of balancing out the earth's wobble to remain in equilibrium with the cosmos. I don't want to get into that in this video, ladies and gentlemen, but it is interesting to look at it that way. It's interesting to look into that. There's so much magic here. There is so much mystery. What are you waiting for? Your belief systems and the definitions of this world and your power need to change, ladies and gentlemen. Change your definitions of yourself. Go in and start doing the full body motionlessness or the full body relaxation exercise I talk about. Do the full body relaxation exercise. Start to learn how to control your muscles and your organs with your mind. That's what that exercise is for. Start doing the thoughtlessness exercise. Do and also, ladies and gentlemen, start doing the inner temple exercise. Start purging the bullshit out of you that was pumped into you. And you all have it. Don't lie to yourself, ladies and gentlemen. And if you don't believe that you have the programming, it means that you have not accessed deep enough portions of your mind to be able to stand back and look at your programming. We'll talk about that in the near future. As you become more conscious, you're able to look at, holy shit, what have I been doing? You start to see the errors in your own thinking processes, and you start to change them. You start to evolve. You start to grow. But here in the Matrix, that's not promoted, because they teach you that you're the shit, man. You're your job. You're your Mercedes-Benz. You're making 200 grand a year, man. You're getting all the ladies. You're just great. There's nothing else to do. A lot of people stop with their education after they get a fucking degree, this, that, and the other, or they graduate. You're never supposed to stop fucking learning. If you stop learning, you start living. Or, wow, excuse me. If you stop learning, you stop living. This body and this mind is designed to be challenged constantly, and not in the way that you view challenge, and not challenged as in the sense of it's trying to get out of a maze. It's supposed to keep gaining information. You're supposed to have all of this, all the just like new neurons developing constantly, ladies and gentlemen. Your brain is supposed to be getting younger. But it's kind of hard to do that when you're not the fountain that you were designed to be, that was designed to bring you eternal life. No. It's kind of hard to regenerate when you're cut off from the system that causes you to regenerate, which is known by the Egyptians as Uraeus, by the Gnostics as ladies and gentlemen, as Gnosis, to, you know, certain sects as the Nirvana or Samadhi, to, you know, again, Christ, or some people refer to it as Heru beheaded, which we talked about earlier in this video. I just got a notification on my phone. I just got an amazing batch of medicinal mushrooms from Mortar and Pestle Herbs for $5. By the time you watch this, I don't even know if they'll be on sale, but for $5 to get that blend of medicinal mushrooms is incredible. Medicinal mushrooms, things like cordyceps, reishi, lion's eye, lion's eye, what the hell? Cordyceps, reishi, chaga, lion's mane. This particular formula has 8 mushrooms in it. When you start getting these mushrooms into your system, such as the turkey tail, ladies and gentlemen, all these great things, your heart starts to rejuvenate. Herbs are great. Things like Shazander are great. Things like Gynostemma are great for the right people, but everyone, in my opinion, should be on a medicinal mushroom supplement. The mushrooms are here to act as our guides out of this mess. And there's some very special mushrooms that I'm not going to talk about in this video, but I think you catch my drift. These are all tools that we can use to get rid of and rewrite all of the bullshit that's been scribed into our minds by the system, by the Matrix folks. Get the medicinal mushrooms back into your system. Ground yourself. I've gotten probably 2.5 hours of grounding done today. And I don't need to hear any bullshit from anybody about how, oh, it's dangerous to ground. There's dirty electricity, blah, blah, blah. But you have no problem going into your goddamn home, which is a New World Order kill pod, and absorbing all the dirty electricity via all of the crap running through your walls, you name it. Get real. You telling me that you're not designed to walk barefoot on the earth? You're afraid to walk barefoot? I wanted to personally thank you for watching my videos and contributing to the growth of my channel. I could not do this without you, and your interest in my content is truly what motivates me and fuels my passion for making these videos and spreading my message. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I wanted to remind you that this channel is a free educational tool that is listener supported, and if you would like to donate to my channel and donate to my cause, help make my life a little bit easier and help keep the lights on around here, you can do so by checking out the links in the description box below. There's a handful of not only ways to donate to my channel, but I also have links to different websites and different videos of mine, as well as my Amazon store, where you can check out a plethora of different health-related products that I use and recommend. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your continued interest in my message, and until next time, peace be with you all.